Everything was fine with our system until the power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
They caused an explosion.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
All right, we're back from the break, ready to jump into Ghostbusters here. JD, are you ready?
So ready.
All right, let's do it. So we start with a shot of the New York City Public Library. We see a librarian walking around, doing her job, putting away books. As she's walking, we see drawers start to pull out on their own and index cards start to fly in the air. She turns and sees it, and that scares her. She starts kind of running through the aisles, and she turns the corner and screams. Her hair blows back, and we have our opening title sequence in the now iconic Ray Parker Ghostbusters song. JD, what do you think of this opening scene here?
You sort of, you definitely did the abridged version there of just how creepy it is to see this old woman back in this creepy ass library, and the books are flying about, the note cards, and then we don't know what she sees, but she sure sees something. It's creepy.
Whatever it is, it blew her hair straight back. We cut to Dr. Venkman and Ray Stantz, and we are outside of their office. On the door, it says, Venkman, burn in hell. Inside the room, Venkman is running some tests on a couple willing college kids. The guy guesses wrong, he gets shocked. The girl guesses wrong, and he fakes it and says, oh, very good, got another one. The guy gets one right, and then Venkman says, sorry, this just is not your lucky day. And then he slowly puts his hand to the shock thing, and the guy's like, don't do it, don't do it. Ah! This is starting to piss me off. He finally stands up, unhooks himself, and runs out, and says, you can keep the $5. Venkman says, I will. JD, what'd you think of this scene?
I never realized how creepy Venkman was when I was younger. Like, he's full on in creep mode here. And he doesn't care about the study. He doesn't care about paranormal research. He doesn't care about this guy that actually gets one right. He only cares about flirting with the little co-ed.
That's what he's doing in the last part of the scene here. When Stantz makes his entrance, Stantz is all fired up about this discovery at the library, and Venkman's like, that sounds good. Give me like an hour or two. Get out of here. And Stantz is like, nope, no can do. You got to come with us. We're going to meet Egon there. And we have to leave the scene. Let's real quick talk about the characters. We've got Bill Murray as Dr. Peter Venkman. Let's talk about him first. What do you think about him in this role?
He's pretty iconic in this role, and so much of who Bill Murray is and what he brings as an actor, both is for his serious roles. Like, I'm reminded so much of him in Kingpin. I'm reminded so much of him in The Life Aquatic. And then just his straight up comedy and even physical comedy, watching him pull off some like little just minor jumping over things and stuff like that. Like,
yeah,
I love it.
Is this his like defining role, you think?
I don't know if about defining role, but it's definitely up in the pantheon of his roles.
Hey, what's your favorite Bill Murray movie, and why is it Garfield?
Never actually seen Garfield. I'm just a massive fan of all of his work with Wes Anderson, though.
Yeah, they've done some great stuff. And then we've got Dan Aykroyd as Ray Stantz. He actually co-wrote the idea. This came from his brain. What do you think about him in this role as Ray Stantz?
I love his commitment. He is in it to win it as a scientist. He believes everything that they're doing, and he has such a passion about what becomes ghost busting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good word. He definitely seems to be like the really committed guy out of the bunch. At least out of the main three. Not that Egon isn't. But speaking of which, we've got Egon Spengler. He's played by the late Harold Ramis. What did you think of him as Egon?
To me, this is Harold Ramis's defining role.
Yep.
Harold Ramis will never be anything other than Egon Spengler. And he is sort of almost the definitive nerd if Rick Moranis doesn't one-up him later, which he totally does.
So Egon is taking some readings at the library when Venkman and Stantz enter. Venkman slams a book on the table, which kind of scares him, sends the meter off in his headset. And then they interview the librarian. Venkman's asking her if she's menstruating right now. And then the guy that like runs the library is like, what's that have to do with anything? Venkman just looks up and says, back off, man, I'm a scientist. Egon gets a reading on his PKE meter, and it leads them down the stairs where the librarian was scared earlier. Egon and Stans are like really serious about their work, but I couldn't help but notice how nonchalant Venkman is, almost borderline annoyed that he has to walk down the stairs. The index cards from earlier are now covered in ectoplasmic residue. They ask Venkman to get a sample, and he sarcastically says, so someone blows their nose and you want to keep it. Egon says, well, I'd like to analyze it. Egon turns the corner with his PKA meter, a bookshelf falls over, and you can see Venkman start to believe a little bit now. He looks at Stans and he's like, has this ever happened to you before? Stans just shakes his head no, and then Egon turns the corner and we see the first ghost of the movie. Ray whispers, it's a torso apparition, and it's real. Venkman asks what they do, and Egon and Stans just stare at each other because they have no idea. So Venkman's like, get over here, and he pulls Ray by the ear, and their big plan is to go talk to the ghost. Venkman tries, but the ghost literally just shushes him, and he's like, okay. And then Ray's big idea is they approach the ghost. He's like, just slowly, slowly, and then it just turns and hisses, and then they all scream and run out of the library. JD, a lot to unpack here with our first ghost. What do you think of this scene?
So I'm going to respond with my thoughts in rewatching this as a 30-something-year-old adult.
Okay.
Do they, up to this point, believe in ghosts? Have any of them ever seen a ghost, or are they legit just hucksters? Because their response upon seeing a ghost of amazement of like, holy shit, we were right, and then it spooks them and they get scared and run. Like, I don't think that they're capable or fit to carry out the work that they're going to need to do later in this movie based on the scene.
Yeah, and that might be how they kind of set it up, and I think you can tell by Stance's response to the first ghost, he's like, and it's real. Like, he even says that, like, they thought it was there, but maybe now they know it's real. That's a good catch by you.
Well, and it's worth noting that Venkman goes first here.
Yes.
Because later in the movie, he makes Stans go first.
Outside, Egon says, well, that wasn't a complete waste. These readings, I believe we can actually potentially catch a ghost and keep it permanently. Venkman is like, are you serious about this ghost catching thing? Egon says, I'm always serious. Venkman tells him that he's going to take back some of the things he said about him. Stans and the other guys enter the school where they're met by the dean, who gives them the news that they're being removed and the university will no longer fund their group activities. Venkman says, but the kids love us. That cracks me up because he's hitting on the girls. Outside of the school, Venkman is giving Stans a quick pep talk. Let's listen to our first clip of the movie.
Stanford now. They wouldn't touch us with a 10-meter cattle prod.
You're always so concerned about your reputation. Einstein did his best stuff when he was working as a patent clerk.
You know how much a patent clerk earns? No. Personally, I like the university. They gave us money and facilities. We didn't have to produce anything. You've never been out of college. You don't know what it's like out there. I've worked in the private sector. They expect results.
For whatever reasons, Ray, call it fate, call it luck, call it karma. I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that we were destined to get thrown out of this dump.
For what purpose?
To go into business for ourselves.
JD, what'd you think of the pep talk from Venkman?
I love the way that Venkman will later be described as a game show host. And he sure has a flair for sort of inciting excitement and passion within people. And he does a great job here of getting what he needs to get out of Ray. And obviously a bottle of liquor doesn't hurt the situation.
Yep. Bottle of liquor. Now the guys exit a bank next, and Stan says he's sick to his stomach. My parents left me that house. Venkman says, you know, everybody has 3 mortgages nowadays. Stans is like, at 19% though? You didn't even bargain with the guy. Venkman tells him to relax. They're on the verge of a huge scientific breakthrough. He can see the franchise rights alone will make them rich beyond their wildest dream. This, of course, was a reality for all those involved in this movie after it came out. because the toys and everything did make them all rich. They're at the firehouse next. Bankman and Egon are trying to bargain with the realtor, kind of telling her all the things that are wrong with the building. But Stance just can't contain himself. He comes sliding down the pole, and he's like, "We gotta stay here tonight. I'm going to get my sleeping bag." Bankman turns and says, I think we'll take it. JD, what'd you think of this scene in our first shot of the firehouse?
The firehouse is such an iconic piece of Ghostbuster mythology, but again, I'm watching it from a grown up and wondering how they're managing a 19% rate. And what kind of down payment do they need to pay on this Ghostbusters house? And like so many questions, but I love how excited Dan Aykroyd gets. Ray is just so happy to slide down that pole, and we get to see a different light of him. And the big takeaway that I took is, we have three men of science, and each one sort of represents a different sort of angle that the scientific method takes. With, I couldn't quote that now, but do you remember that from school, the scientific method, right?
Yeah, generally.
You can tell neither of us paid attention in a science class in college.
C-.
Oh, you did that well?
Yeah.
My point being, so we get to see, Ray smile a little where he's usually so, particular with what he's doing in his process and getting the facts and everything like that. He has more of a Bankman's approach to excitement here.
All right, we got a couple new characters next. We've been waiting a long time to talk about this guy. We have Louis Tully, played by Rick Moranis. What do you think of Louis Tully?
I can't wrap my mind fully around this just, New York City Jewish accountant working out in the middle of the day, in the middle of the 80s, hitting on his neighbor, then locking himself out. It's just so perfect. And it's sort of Rick Moranis in a nutshell.
I love that he said he played the tape in double speed, so it was a 20-minute workout. He got it down to 10. So I just imagine him doing like the aerobics, just like super speed. That would have been an awesome clip. And then, of course, we have Dana Barrett, who's played by Sigourney Weaver. What do you think of Sigourney Weaver here? And I'm kind of surprised that she did Ghostbusters. This wasn't really her genre at that time.
Well, I personally can never tell the difference between her, Sigourney Weaver, and Susan Sarandon. So for a very long time when I was young, I was very confused about.
Right.
They look similar when you're young.
In the face, yeah.
But no, I think she does a great job here. I think she's a great fit. And the only thing that I would love to see more out of her is I love the interaction that she has with Bankman, but
okay.
She almost has like a quiet strength to her that I think would fit so well into today's modern movement. And criticize me if you want, but I feel like the Ghostbusters remake definitely didn't hit what she hits in this movie.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And inside Dana's apartment, she's putting down all her stuff and her groceries, and we have a Ghostbusters commercial play. And at the end, the guys all say in harmony, "We're ready to believe you." Dana kind of scoffs at it a bit, turns off the TV, and then in the kitchen, she's putting away her groceries. She sets some eggs on the tile counter next to a bag of Stay Puft marshmallows. I love the foreshadowing. I don't know that I ever noticed that until I went and actually took notes. The eggs begin to crack and explode out of the shell onto the countertop, and then Dana hears a growl. She opens her fridge, and it's like a portal to hell. She just screams and slams the door. What'd you think of this scene?
This scene always creeped me out as a kid, partly because of the way that the eggs crack and bubble.
Yeah.
Sort of look like soap. I wonder if they used soap at all in any of this effect. But the whole portal to hell scene is just like, I remember always opening the refrigerator very cautiously, much like Venkman does later when he first checks out the apartment in a few scenes coming up. But man, it's so brutal yet simple. And to me, like rewatching this now as an adult, I kind of forget that this is a comedy and that a lot of this is sort of a parody of what is a ghost supernatural movie. And that's the point of it. It's just so right on with what it's trying to do that it lulls you into such a sense of security that when you watch it, you're kind of like, whoa. And then you're like, wow. And then at the same time, you're kind of like, whoa, creep me out.
Then you're like, woo! Ric Flair, baby. Sorry. I don't know
Wrong
why.
Rick. Woo! Rick Moranis, baby.
So Ray pulls up to the firehouse next, and he's got this old black beat up car. He gets out and he says, well, everyone can relax. I found the car. It just needs this. Bankman's like, how much? Only $4,800. The vehicle used here for the Ectomobile was a 1959 Cadillac Miller Meteor. And it's basically like an aftermarket ambulance conversion. You can actually get your own Ecto one right now on a site called bobspropshop.com for about $100,000. JD, would you drive around an Ecto car if you had that kind of scratch?
If I had that kind of cheddar, I would be in a Jurassic Park gas-powered Wrangler.
Okay. So we meet Janine Melnitz next, played by Annie Potts. She's very matter-of-fact. I love her character. Bankman tells her to type something. Paying you here. Don't just stare at me with those bug eyes. They creep me out. Then he walks about 5 feet. Janine, I'm sorry about the whole bug eyes thing. I'll be in my office. I love that Egon pops up like right from in between her legs. He's like underneath the desk working on the computer. And Janine definitely appears to be smitten with Egon here. And she asks if he reads a lot. And he says, I think print is dead. She carries on. She's like, I think reading's a fabulous way to spend your free time. She asks if he has any hobbies, and Egon says he collects spores, molds, and funguses. Dana enters next. Bankman jumps up from his desk, leaps over the counter, and then starts like interviewing her right away, introduces himself, and then we cut to in the back, and they're all kind of asking her questions now, and she really doesn't want to believe any of this is really happening. Ray says he'll go check out the history of the building. Egon says he'll look up the name Zool in the usual literature. And Bankman says, I'll take Miss Barrett back to her apartment and I'll check her out. I'll check out Mrs. Barrett's apartment. JD, what do you think of the comedy from Bankman? It's always so subtle.
It is subtle, and I touched on this earlier. Watching him jump over that little door to get out to see her, I don't know if that was improvised or if that was written for Bill Murray or for Venkman, but it just fits his character as an actor and character as Venkman's personality just so perfectly. Just whoop, here I go. I'm jumping over this now.
I like that part of it, but the part that cracks me up the most is as soon as she starts talking, you can see him. He was like kind of slouching in his chair. Like he sits up straight as an arrow, sees her, and he's just like upright on his feet. I just love when he like pops up real quick, turns his head right at her. That cracks me up.
So you can say he gets erected.
Yes. Yes, he does. We cut to the apartment. Bankman is putting on a bit of a show here. He's walking around. He's pumping around his little wand full of air. I don't even know what it is. I mean, she even asked him that much. She's like, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's one of our toys. She goes, you don't act like a scientist. He's like, yeah, they're usually pretty stiff. No, you're more like a game show host. They go into the kitchen and they see the mess on the table. Bankman opens the fridge door real slow, peeks in and says, oh my God, look at all the junk food. He grabs a pack of bologna. He's like, you don't actually eat this stuff, do you? There's nothing but food in the fridge. He says that he believes her, and then they go into the living room and he tries to put the moves on her, eventually telling her that he's madly in love with her. And then she responds, will you please leave? And out loud he says, then she threw me out of her life. Thought I was a creep. Thought I was a geek. He stops by the door and says, I got it. I'll prove myself to you. I'll solve your little problem. And then you'll think Pete Bankman is a man that gets things done. JD, what'd you think of this back and forth here?
This is definitely the strength that she has that I was sort of referencing earlier. Like, she knows, like, if you look at her facial expressions, she's not a damsel in distress, despite him being there to help her to save the day. She sees right through his nonsense. He himself is baloney.
Yeah.
And she calls him a game show host. Like, I love it. It's just so perfect. And it's so rare in this time to see, a female who even needs help to not be that damsel in distress.
Right. At the firehouse, Stan says they're eating the last of the petty cash after Venkman asks for some to take Dana out because, we don't want to lose our only client. Moments later, Janine gets a call and she slams down the phone and yells, "We got one!" She hits the buzzer, the guys shoot down the fire pole, they jump in the Ecto-1, and they head to the hotel. JD, this is the first time we get to see them in full uniform. We get to see the Ecto-1s completely all done up, painted white. It's got the sirens and all that stuff and the lights. This is such a huge part of that Ghostbusters fandom that we talked about earlier in the episode. The flight suit, the black boots, the elbow pads, the proton packs, the military straps that they use on them. I love the combination of the outfit here. What do you think of seeing it all put together for the first time?
It's definitely a classic look. It's timeless. It still holds up. I wish that we got to see some time seeing Egon create the proton packs a little bit. I feel like we sort of just jumped from, hey, we should start a business, to, hey, we've got all the startup funds, to, hey, we got a client.
Yeah.
But I'm not complaining because it's so great to see, we got one, and then the music hits and they hit the poles and we get to see the iconic Ecto-1, and they just pull up to this swanky ass hotel in Mid-City, New York, or wherever the F they are.
Donald Trump Plaza Hotel. Dial 954.
You beat me to it.
In the hotel, they head over to the elevator. A guy with just an amazing mustache. Like, what are you, some sort of cosmonaut? Bankman says, no, we're exterminators. Someone saw a cockroach up on 12. That's got to be some sort of cockroach. Bankman says, yeah, bite your head off, man. In the elevator, Stan says, it just occurred to me that we haven't really had a successful test of this equipment. Egon says he blames himself. Bankman says he does too. Stan says, well, no use of worrying now. Bankman says, yeah, why worry? Each of us is wearing an unlicensed nuclear accelerator on its back. Stan's asked to be switched on, and we hear the pack fire up. Just zing! Egon and Bankman both make big eyes and then move away from Stan, which I thought was funny. And then in the hallway, they see a maid go across. She's kind of pushing a cart. Stantz and Spangler turn and fire a stream at her, pretty much blowing up the entire cart. And then the lady says, "What the hell is you doing?" They apologize. Then they turn to each other and said, well, looks like we have our successful test. Stantz turns the corner and sees Slimer. Man, JD, Slimer became such a huge hit with the TV show Real Ghostbusters. It's funny to kind of see him here for the first time, and as Ray describes him as just this disgusting blob. What do you think of that for the first look of Slimer?
I don't know how he picked up without the cartoon to be as iconic as he is, because his appearance in this movie is very brief, very silly, but not in a funny way. Like the part where he's later drinking liquor and it just there's that just brown stream pouring out from his rear end. It just made me laugh so hard. And outside of the fact that he slimes Bankman, there's no hey, that's Slimer. He just is a Slimer. You get what I'm getting at there?
I get what you're getting at. So Ray tries to go after Slimer, but he kind of goes through the wall. And then on the other side of the wall is Venkman. And let's listen to a clip here as Venkman gets attacked by Slimer.
Come in, Ray.
Pittman! I saw it!
It's right here, Ray. It's looking at me.
He's an ugly little spud, isn't he?
I think he can hear you, Ray.
Don't move. It won't hurt you. What happened? Are you okay?
He slimed me.
JD, he got slimed. What do you think?
He got his ass slimed. My favorite part about this scene is the fact that Bankman, he's on the walkie-talkie, and Ray tells him to stay still, do not move. He will not attack you if you don't move. But Ray has no idea.
No, he doesn't.
He really doesn't have any clue. Because keep in mind, outside of when they first encountered the ghost in the library, none of them had ever seen one before. So we can only surmise that this is the second spook that they've ever encountered. So for Ray to be like, no, it's cool, stand still. Like, he didn't attack me, he won't attack you. And then he just gets bum rushed by this green goblin. I don't know, it just cracks me up.
Hey, man, who you calling a spook? Back to the Future?
Episode in our archives.
It's in our archives, check it out. They go down into the conference room, and Ray is wearing his ecto goggles now. Venkman says, that's him. That's the one that slimed me. They split up a bit, and they start firing at Slimer, and they miss him, and you can hear glass shattering. Outside the conference room, the hotel manager is assuring this elderly lady that her room will be ready soon. And of course, we know it's not going to be. Inside, Ray says, all right, we need to clear out some space here so we can lay down the trap. Venkman says, hold on, I've always wanted to do this. Pulls out the tablecloth from underneath the dishes and says, and the flowers are still standing. Stantz instructs Egon to give him a confinement stream, and he tells him to hold it up there. Venkman joins in, and Ray tells them not to look at the trap. Egon immediately says, Ray, I looked at the trap. He tells him to turn off the stream on his count. Okay, I'm closing it now. Venkman exits the room. We came, we saw, we kicked its ass. Stantz tells the hotel manager, what you have here is what we call a focused, non-terminal repeating phantasm, or a class 5 full roaming vapor. Real nasty one. Venkman says, let's talk money. It's going to cost you $4,000 for the entrapment, and we're running a special this week or this month on proton pack recharging. That'll be about $1,000, so 5,000 big bucks. The manager says he has no idea it would be so expensive, he won't pay it. Venkman says, that's okay, we'll just put it back. Manager agrees to do it, and then that gets us to our montage, which we'll talk about in a second. JD, what'd you think of the first entrapment of the ghost? Man, $5,000 for about an hour's worth of work, not a bad living.
I always wonder, is there actually a fee for the proton charging and the containment, or is that just... I take it that Egon's just making that up, right?
Well, I think it's Venkman, and you have to imagine Venkman's making it up.
Well, if you look at Spangler, he scratches his face with 4 fingers.
Yeah.
And then that's why Venkman says it's $4,000. And then he looked at Spangler again, who then just like motions with 1 finger across his face. And then Venkman's like, oh, $1,000.
Yeah, I did not catch getting the signs. Wow, I'm going to have to go back and look at that. That's funny. Yeah, I would imagine Egon knows exactly how much they need, probably just to pay that 19% for the month. So that's probably what they're shooting for. But yeah, I thought that was a cool scene. And then we cut to the montage. It wouldn't be an 80s movie without one, right? And we just have like all these like news reports and like newspaper clippings, and business is a booming here. We even have a very young Larry King cameo. Man, he's been around for some time. Best part of the montage, though, is towards the end here. Ray is laying in the bed in his cot, and a ghost appears to be giving him some business, looking to beak with old Ray. What'd you think of this montage scene?
I never understood or accepted the gravity of the end of the montage until I was much older.
Yeah.
I don't know what I thought. Yeah, I obviously didn't understand the birds and the bees when I first saw this.
Right.
And I don't know what I thought was going on. But you saw the new Ghostbusters movies, right?
Yeah.
Or the new movie. Is there like an equivalent scene to this in the new one?
There's not.
Because I don't think you can pull this off anymore.
No, the part that always cracks me up too, and I definitely never caught this as a kid, but watching it back today, it's, you know, the ghost kind of like goes, like unzips his pants, and then they cut to him and his eyes roll back in his head.
Well,
that's so inappropriate.
What is he wearing? He's got on like a royal jacket or something with like shoulder pads and tassels. Have you ever noticed it before?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
wearing like a Civil War general's jacket.
We have our first shot of Winston, played by Ernie Hudson. JD, your thoughts on Ernie Hudson in the role of Winston?
There could be no one else. It
I
has
can't.
to be him.
He's the perfect man for this role, honestly.
Have you ever met him?
I have not, but I've heard he's really super nice. And I do want to meet him at a Comic-Con at some point, have some Ghostbusters memorabilia signed.
I've never met him either, but I would love to shake his hand. I bet he's got big hands and a big smile and a big heart.
Easy now.
I was hoping you wouldn't do that, but you did. I was just complimenting the man for his reputation of being a great guy, and you went right for his
Swing low, sweet chair. I love that Janine is reading this long list of things to Winston that he has to believe in. And then when she's done, he goes, "Lady, if there's a steady paycheck, I'll believe anything you say." Stantz and Venkman enter. Ray says he's just dog tired. And then Janine introduces Winston. Venkman says, "Oh, good. Congrats, you're hired." Stantz hands him a trap right away and says, "Welcome aboard." Next, we cut to Venkman meeting up with Dana. Let's listen to a clip as they go back and forth outside of the orchestra.
Could you wait here a minute?
Huh? Sure.
Dr. Venkman, this is a surprise.
That was a wonderful rehearsal.
You heard that?
Yes, you're the best one in your row.
Oh, thank you. You're good. Most people can't hear me with the whole orchestra playing.
I don't have to take this abuse from you. I got hundreds of people dying to abuse me.
I know, you're a big celebrity now. You have some information for me on my case?
Who's the staff?
This stiff happens to be one of the finest musicians in the world.
Do you have some information for me, please?
Well, sure, but I prefer to give it to you in private.
Why don't you tell me now?
Well, okay, I found the name Zool for you. Well, the name Zool refers to a demigod worshipped around 6000 BC by the... What's that word?
Hittites.
Hittites, Mesopotamians, and Sumerians.
Zool was the minion of Gozer. What's Gozer?
Gozer was very big in Sumeria.
Well, what's he doing in my icebox?
I'm working on that. If we could get together Thursday night, I'm thinking 9-ish. You know, we could exchange information.
I can't see you Thursday. I'm busy.
Miss Barrett, you seem to think there is something wrong up here that says in your mind he enjoys taking his evenings off and spending it with his clients. No, I'm making a special exception in your case because I respect you. It's corny, but I respect you as an artist. And as a dresser, too. This is a magnificent coordination you have going here today.
I'll see you Thursday.
I'll bring the Royal Lance Guide and we'll eat and read.
JD, your thoughts on this scene?
First of all, what is this little jig that Venkman does when she looks over and sees him in the distance?
I love it. I don't know what it is.
I don't know either, and he's just so happy to just do. But to me, this is like the first time that we get to see, like, Venkman's obviously an intelligent man. He's very confident in what he does, but he's very tactful as well. And he controls this conversation and gets everything he wants out of it. He just needed to, like, lose the clown suit, the game show host, big lapels, and she sees him for being a capable scientist, which I think is all he ever wants. And, who he is as a scientist and being into paranormal psychology and normal psychology, I feel like he is the black sheep in the Ghostbusters, but he's the normal one in society where the others are the black sheep. So there's like that really cool comparison and juxtaposition that I feel comes really to full fruition here.
That's all good points. And the one thing I love, and this is one of my favorite insults to call somebody, is he looks over at the guy she's with and goes, "Who's the stiff?" I didn't know what that was for a long time. And then when I was a teenager, my dad explained, "Oh, stiff is a dick." So who's the dick?
See, I'm going to go ahead and combat you really quick.
Okay.
While I know and understand and appreciate and agree with the fact that calling somebody a stiff refers to the fact that they are a dick, I always thought it referred to them as being a dead body. So somebody that's a stiff is lifeless, they're boring, they've got no energy, they're just worthless. They're just a stiff.
You could probably take it any way you want it there, huh?
That's what she said.
Next, Stance is showing Winston how the containment unit works. He says when the light is green, the trap is clean. Then the ghosts are incarcerated in their custom-made storage facility. Janine goes over to Venkman to say that there's a man waiting for him. And then Janine says, by the way, you promised me you'd hire more help. I've been working here 2 weeks without a break. And then he kind of insults her by saying something along the lines, well, somebody with your qualifications should have no problem finding a job in the food service. Anywhere. Probably saying she could work cash register at like McDonald's. The phone rings. He's like, you can answer that? And she picked up and goes, Ghostbusters, what do you want? Let's listen to Venkman and Walter Peck.
You Peter Venkman?
Yes, I'm Dr. Venkman.
Exactly what are you a doctor of, Mr. Venkman?
Well, I have PhDs in parapsychology and psychology.
I see. And now you catch ghosts.
Yeah, you could say that.
And how many ghosts have you caught, Mr. Venkman?
I'm not at liberty to say.
And where do you put these ghosts once you catch them?
Into a storage facility.
And would the storage facility be located on these premises?
Yes.
And may I see this storage facility?
No.
And why not, Mr. Venkman?
Because you did not use the magic word.
What is the magic word, Mr. Venkman?
Please.
May I please see the storage facility, Mr. Venkman?
Why do you want to see the storage facility?
Well, because I'm curious. I want to know more about what you do here. Frankly, there have been a lot of wild stories in the media, and we want to assess any possible environmental impact from your operation. For instance, the presence of noxious, possibly hazardous waste chemicals in your basement. Now, you either show me what is down there, or I come back with a court order.
You go get a court order, and I'll sue your ass for wrongful prosecution.
You can have it your way, Mr. Venkman. I'm worried, Ray.
JD, thoughts on Walter Peck?
Walter Peckerhead. Everything about this guy just sucks. From his perfectly manicured beard to his 80s coiffed hair to his three-piece suit. Peck, you're a peckerhead. So congrats to this actor for I hated him when I was a kid. As a 6-year-old, I was like, dude, this dude sucks. This is the kind of guy that you hit a baseball into his lawn and he takes it and he's like, you can't. You'll lose your baseball now.
Oh yeah, he's definitely the guy that would not give you your ball back, for sure. Yeah, I agree. I hear he's quite a nice guy. But yeah, in this role, he did great because I hate him in this role. Egon is talking to Stance and Winston. I have to play this clip. It's one of my favorite lines of the movie here.
Getting crowded in there, and all my recent data points to something big on the horizon. What do you mean, the big? Well, let's say this Twinkie represents the normal amount of psychokinetic energy in the New York area. According to this morning's sample, it would be a Twinkie 35 feet long, weighing approximately 600 pounds.
That's a big Twinkie.
JD, that's a big Twinkie. What'd you think of the Twinkie scene here?
Oh, definitely a big Twinkie. It's a decent comparison, and I am a fan of really insane metaphors, and I often compare things to things that they need not to be compared to. And the Twinkie reference does not make any sense, but at the same time makes perfect sense. And then to see him chomp down on the Twinkie.
So we have a shot on top of Dana's just giant apartment building. We see a dog statue, and the feet start to bust out a little bit. We don't see much more. It's just a quick shot. And then we have a couple quick scenes here with Dana arriving at her apartment, and then she interacts with Lewis, who invites her to come to the party. And then she goes inside after she tells him, maybe she'll stop by and then she gets a call from her mother. And then when she gets off the phone from her mom, she's sitting on the sofa chair, and you see all these like bright lights coming from the kitchen door. She turns and sees the door, like hands pressing against the door. And then these hands come up through her chair, wrap around her. And then we see the terror dog, who came from the statue on top of the building. And then she gets like shot with the whole chair, just goes flying into the kitchen. I love these special effects, even in 1984. JD, what do you think?
This is, in my experience, the horrifying scene of Ghostbusters. This used to freak me out. This gave me nightmares beyond belief.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was because my grandma lived in a similar apartment building, at least the way that it was decorated, maybe. And she had a similar chair in a similar corner, and anytime I would sit in it, I would say, "This is it. This is how the monsters get me," and I died now. Freaked me out. Like I could not. I don't know. Like, I love it, and it's so perfectly done, and like so practically done, and it's so great to see things that don't just rely on CGI. It's just that was actual people coming out and bursting from out of the chair.
Yep, absolutely. And to talk about the terror dogs real quick, in the Ghostbusters canon, these are the two loyal servants to Gozer, known as Zool. What do you think of the terror dogs?
Ooh, they are terrifying. And I love what happens with him later on with the scene with Rick Moranis outside the restaurant with the terror dog. Is that officially what they're called, terror dogs?
They're called terror dogs.
Terror dogs. I did not know that.
Yep. So, and we're actually going to get to that scene right here. So, we cut to the party. Lewis is going around. He's mingling. This one girl's like, I'm about to leave. He's like, no, just dance with me. And then he starts ripping a dance that had me just splitting at the side laughing, watching him dance. You hear Disco Inferno playing in the background. And then he takes a coat from a couple new guests that have just come in. He tosses them into the bedroom and throws the coat right on the terror dog. We hear the dog growl. Lewis laughs and says, okay, who brought the dog? And then all of a sudden that dog comes flying through the door. I have to say, I just mentioned how much I love the last scene. This scene here has not aged well at all, with the dog and the chase scene.
Not at all.
Through New York City. That's probably my only gripe with the movie, is this scene just hasn't aged well. But I mean, you got it's 1984. Like, what can you do, right?
Yeah. Well, they did the best with what they had.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see Lewis just running throughout New York City, being chased by this giant dog. Yeah, he arrives at this fancy restaurant. He can't get into any of the doors, so he's pounding on the glass. Let me in! And then he just turns around slowly as we hear the dog growl. And then we see him kind of like faint to the ground. And then all the people in the restaurant just go back to eating like it's no big deal. Did you pick up on that?
It was one of my favorite parts of the scene, even when I was a kid, to be like how little they cared about him.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Venkman arrives at Dana's apartment to see debris in the hallway. Dana answers, and her hair's a little wild, and it's also blowing in the wind. And she asks if he's the keymaster, and he's like, not that I know of. She shuts the door in his face. He knocks again, and this time he plays along. He's like, yeah, I'm the keymaster. Well, he sent me over here. She says that she is Zool, the keymaster, and they are preparing for the coming of Gozer, the Destructor. Venkman hasn't quite figured it out yet. He's like, so are we still going out? Zool asked if he wants this body, and he's like, is this a trick question? And then she jumps on top of him. But of course, he kind of like pushes her off, and he is a nice guy. He didn't take advantage. And then we cut back to what I think is Central Park, where Lewis is now running around. His hair's all messed up now too, and he's telling everybody that he's the gatekeeper. And he's just fully unhinged here. The police eventually pick him up and bring him to the firehouse. They open the back door, and Egon scans him and says, you better bring him inside. And then he whispers to Janine, I don't think he's human. He says his name is Vince Clortho. Janine checks his ID and says, nah, it says here his name is Louis Tully. And then she asks him if he'd like some coffee. And he's like, should I? And Egon says, yes, have some. He responds with, yes, have some. Janine calls Egon over and tells him there's something very wrong with that man. Venkman calls on the phone and tells Egon that he's been going through some stuff with Dana over here. So she says that she's the gatekeeper. Egon says, well, that's interesting because I'm over here with the keymaster. JD, what do you think of this scene?
A little overly convenient to the plot that half the group meets up with the gatekeeper, half the group meets up with the keymaster. But I don't care because it's so perfectly done, and we get to see the two different elements, and neither of them are the bad guy, but we get to see the supernatural coming to life through that.
Right. One of the things I think you can get away with if you have a good story is things can be convenient sometimes. Like, this to me doesn't kill the movie at all. I think it works. In other movies, you might see this and go, oh, geez, well, of course, yeah. You know what I mean?
Totally agree with you.
Now, Winston and Stans are in the Ecto-1, and they're talking about biblical times. And they're talking about Judgment Day. Winston says, has it ever occurred to you, Ray, that maybe the reason we're so busy right now is because the dead has literally been rising? JD, what do you think of all the Judgment Day talk here?
I think that this is an underplayed scene. Like, there's a lot of subtext to be had here that I don't think necessarily is really cultivated throughout the rest of the movie. But it's a big part of it, and especially in the last scene, you see a lot of rabbis and priests and people outside of Dana's building that are just super concerned with the religious implications of what's going on. So I think that this is like a critical scene to set up exactly how important the world community would take these events.
Pecker arrives at the firehouse next, and he's looking to close up shop on the Ghostbusters. He's being escorted by a police officer, and he says that he has a cease and desist order. Egon tries to stop them and warns of the danger, but Peck isn't having any of it. Venkman arrives and tries to play middleman. Egon, he fails miserably because Walter Peck is not backing down, and he's ordering this guy, Con Ed, to do his job. Egon motions to Venkman that they need to get out of here. This place is going to blow. And then the Con Ed guy shuts off the power grid, and things start to rumble. Egon screams, leave the building! As things blow sky high, literally a giant hole right through the top of the roof. And we see all the free-roaming vapors shoot into the sky. And then Stans and Winston arrive. They're met by Walter Peck, who orders for them to be arrested. And then we have this brilliant soundtrack song on here called I Believe It's Magic that plays in the background. I always love this song. JD, what do you think of this scene here, and then the coming montage of seeing all these dead bodies and ghosts throughout the city?
I love it. It's so great to me that we have a movie called Ghostbusters, that we have a movie about them proving the existence of ghosts over and over and over, and yet people still don't believe them until the ghosts are overtaking the city.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what more do you need? It's like, I almost want to make a comparison to a lot of the parables that Jesus did, where, he continued to perform miracles throughout the world and, throughout the country, and people continued to doubt him. That I think that there is a lot of an allegory to be had about what the Ghostbusters are doing, what the people were not buying into and what some did buy into, and the reality of the whole situation.
There's definitely a lot of biblical stuff in Ghostbusters. Dialogue, the priest, and how much they look up to him, the mayor, the Ghostbusters. There's a lot of that stuff in here. That's a good catch. So in the jail cell, Stans has to explain to Venkman what is going on, and he looks at him and goes, you never studied in school, did you? Stans tells him that his girlfriend is living in the corner penthouse of Spook Central. And then let's listen to Egon explain the end of the world.
She barks, she drools, she claws. It's not the girl, Peter, it's the building. Something terrible is about to enter our world, and this building is obviously the door. The architect's name was Ivo Shandor. I found it in Tobin's Spirit Guide. He was also a doctor. Performed a lot of unnecessary surgery. And then in 1920, he started a secret society.
Let me guess. Gozer worshippers.
Right.
No studying.
After the First World War, Shandor decided that society was too sick to survive. And he wasn't alone. He had close to 1,000 followers when he died. They conducted rituals up on the roof. Bizarre rituals intended to bring about the end of the world, and now it looks like it may actually happen.
So be good. For goodness sake. Whoa, somebody's
We
coming.
have to get out of here. We've got to find a judge or something.
Hey, wait a minute. Hey. Hold it. Now, we're actually going to go before a federal judge and say that some moldy Babylonian god is going to drop in on Central Park West and start tearing up the city.
Sumerian, not Babylonian.
Yeah, big difference.
No offense, but I got to get my own lawyer.
Okay.
JD, thoughts on this scene?
Yeah, I mean, the end of the world is a concept that every civilization has pondered throughout the entirety of time. And the thought that any deity or any kind of entity can come and just cause mass chaos to put their reign of terror and just boom, stomp their foot on us. I don't know. It makes you, and I think Egon does a great job of sort of explaining just how fragile humanity is and just how little we are.
We cut to Dana's room. Lewis enters and says he's the keymaster. She responds and says she's the gatekeeper. And then we cut back to the Ghostbusters, who are about to speak to the mayor. Peck is also in the room. Let's listen to a clip here.
Phenomena. Personally, Lenny, I think it's a sign from God. But don't quote me on that.
No, I think that's the smart move, Mike.
Well, I'm not going to call a press conference and tell everyone to start praying.
I'm Winston Zeddemore, Your Honor. Look, I've only been with the company for a couple of weeks. But I gotta tell you, these things are real. Since I joined these men, I have seen shit that'll turn you white.
Well, you could believe Mr. Pecker.
My name is Peck.
Or you could accept the fact that this city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion.
What do you mean, biblical?
What he means is Old Testament, Mr. Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff.
Exactly.
Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Enough, I get the point.
What if you're wrong?
If I'm wrong, nothing happens. We go to jail, peacefully, quietly. We'll enjoy it. But if I'm right, and we can stop this thing, Lenny, you will have saved the lives of millions of registered voters.
JD, thoughts on this scene?
No, it's so great that we have like the balance between church and state here. We have I'm guessing that's the cardinal or the bishop or
you know what? I don't. It's not my religion on this one, so I have no idea what they call him officially. My apologies.
They call him Matt or Anthony or Tom or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that you have the level of authority that the church brings in, and we have the mayor. It's mayor, right?
Yeah.
And he's looking at science, he's looking at religion, and he's looking back at science again from a different angle with the EPA, and he just has to accept what's reality and do what's best for his people. I mean, it's logical, and it's a situation that you have to expect that a lesser man would have made a different decision. So props to Mayor.
Yeah, and just for the record, the religious guy is called the Archbishop. The one thing I like about the mayor is just the way he says Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters! Such a New York accent. He's perfect as the mayor there, is he not?
Oh, he totally is. And for the longest time, I didn't know the difference between this guy, Casey Kasem, and Larry King.
So the mayor makes his decision. He kicks Peck out of the office. He sends the Ghostbusters back to work with the help of what I assume is probably the National Guard. And then we see Venkman here in the Ecto-1 lean out the window and says, "Come on, let's run some red lights." The Ghostbusters arrive at this very tall apartment building. We see lightning bolts coming down from the sky. The road cracks. The guys fall down. The police cars kind of dump into the street. All the people that were watching, that were cheering them minutes ago, are now kind of taking cover. The guys climb out of the now destroyed paved road, and the crowd erupts with a chant of Ghostbusters as they get back to safety and enter the apartment building. JD, what'd you think of this earthquake type scene here?
It plays into what Zedmore was saying earlier, the religious conversation about there being earthquakes and the plagues that'll present themselves upon the land. So we shouldn't be surprised that we get to see it. But I just am always like so troubled by the fact that the people are just like, they're hanging out and then, oh, there's ghosts up there. Awesome. Earthquake. Oh, no, totally cool. Everyone's okay.
But seriously, Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters, go. Like, yeah, I don't know why there's a crowd. That part makes no sense to me. So the guys climb out of that road. They enter the apartment building, and the elevator's down, so they have to climb every flight of stairs. But halfway in, Venkman asks where they're at, and Stantz goes, I think we're in the teens somewhere. Venkman says, all right, when we hit 20, let me know. I gotta throw up. Meanwhile, on the roof, Dana and Lewis await the arrival of Gozer. We smash back to Dana's room. It's been completely trashed. The guys kick down the door, and they see some stairs kind of leading up to this roof area. Then we cut back to Dana and Lewis, who are now standing on the rocks where the terror dogs once were. Lightning hits both of them, and they both turn into dogs. The dogs run up the staircase where we meet our new character, Gozer. And she's played by, I'm gonna mess this up, Slavica Jovan. She was a model from Yugoslavia. JD, what do you think of Gozer?
She is so, I don't know, do we call her she? Is it a he, an it, a they, just an entity? Because Gozer isn't a gender, correct?
Right. I don't, basically Gozer can transform into anything it wants. So in this case, it came back as a Yugoslavian model that has gymnastics.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does have gymnastic skills.
Yeah, so I thought she did great, though. I mean, there's really not a whole lot of lines here, but I mean, she looks great. Venkman says, whatever it is, it has to go through us. Go get her, Ray. Stantz tries to talk to her, and Gozer says, are you God? He says, no. And Gozer says, well then, die. And she shoots lightning from her hands, and it sends the guys flying over the edge. Winston tells him that if somebody asks if you're a god, you say yes. Venkman says, this chick is toast. They prime the proton packs and start firing at Gozer. Flies straight into the air, lands on the top flat top piece behind them, and does like a triple axel in the air. And then they try and fire again. This time she vanishes to thin air. The guys all kind of start to celebrate, except for Egon, who already has his meter out. And he says, this looks extremely bad. Gozer, this is all voiceover here. Gozer says, a traveler has come. Stantz asks her to clarify what she means, and she tells them to choose the form of the Destructor. Venkman says he gets it. So if we think of like J. Edgar Hoover, we'll come back as J. Edgar Hoover. So empty your head. Don't think of anything. The choice is made. And then Venkman's like, what? Nobody chose anything. Egon, did you choose anything? No. Winston, you? No. Ray? He's like, I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. No, it can't be. No way. We hear Egon yell, oh, shit. And we zoom in on Ray, who says, it's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. JD, what do you think of Gozer, the Destructor, coming back as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man?
It's like almost perfect dramatic irony that we have something so soft and so just helpless, and we've been hinted at it earlier with just a bag of it, that for it to come back in a terrifying form, it again reminded me that we're in a horror comedy movie. It's not an action movie. It's not a straight comedy movie. It's not a straight horror movie. It's supposed to be a hybrid of the both. And to have this just hilarious manifestation is perfect. It can't be anything else.
let me turn the tables. If that question had been turned on us, what would you have chose?
A giant boob.
Just Christina Hendricks, 75 feet tall.
I said a boob. I didn't say two.
Well, mine went to her, so.
So that's what yours is. Yours is two boobs.
It just comes back to Christina Hendricks walking down the road, jiggling everywhere.
The end of Dude, Where's My Car?
Yes, very nice, Sultan. So we see the Marshmallow Man walk up to the building, and they blast him full stream. Of course, the Mallow catches on fire here, and Stan says they all kind of huddle. Sorry, here. So the marshmallow catches on fire. The guys all huddle up, and Stan says, "Funny, this is how we go out, taken out by 100-foot Marshmallow Man." Bankman says, "I think we're reading him all wrong. You know, he's a sailor. He's out in New York. We gotta get this guy laid. We won't have any trouble." The Marshmallow Man is now scaling the building. Egon tells them that they can reverse this by crossing the streams. Bankman reminds them that it was him that said they should never cross the streams. So they shoot the streams into the temple at the top of the stairs, and they blow it up. And then we see the marshmallow just explode, and then chunks fly from the sky. JD, what'd you think of this scene here with the explosion and the reversal?
I read a thing recently that basically suggested maybe that they don't survive this.
That'd be interesting.
That the way that the movie ends is because they explode phenomenally. They destroy the city block that they're around because, Egon played, he said this as fact, like across the streams, you essentially just, boom, you end everything. And he says this as a man of science and fact, of experience and research. And they do the one thing that he says not to do. So it makes sense to believe that they're all baked. And everything that they have is just their last vision of life and their death fantasy. And it ends with a freaking sitcom kind of ending with Dan Aykroyd just being like, "Oh, here I am."
Yeah, but then that kind of ruins the TV show and the video games and the Halloween costumes and the licensing that would make them rich beyond their wildest dreams. So they can't die. They have to stay. So we're back at the top of the building. They find each other. Everybody's fine. We see the terror dog, who's now just burnt to a crisp. And Stan says, it smells like barbecue dog hair. And he's like, "Oh, Bankman, I'm sorry. I forgot." We see a part of the statue break off, and the guys quickly go over and start tearing it apart. And Dana appears like a angel coming out of a shell. I don't know. She's completely fine. And then we hear Lewis say, "Someone turn on the lights." Bankman tells them to go check on the little guy. Lewis says that the superintendent's going to be pissed. And he asks who they are. Stans tells him that they're the Ghostbusters. He says, "Well, who does your taxes?" And the scene ends with Winston yelling, "I love this town." The credits roll, and then we see everybody outside with marshmallow in their hair getting cheered by the crowd again. JD, what did you think of the ending of the film?
It's very satisfying to see them having gone from ridiculed and mocked and just teased to saving the city and being exalted for their efforts. And I don't get why Winston yells that out on the top of this building to himself. I don't know,
but if I ever get his autograph, that's what he's putting on. I love this town.
I love this town. But to me, I think the more poignant and perfect phrase to sum up a character in this movie is Rick Moranis. Who does your taxes? He went through hell. He went to hell and back. Hey, who does your taxes? I love it.
Yep. So Ghostbusters is 34 years old. How would you rate just how this film has stood the test of time?
There are a few scenes that don't hold up, but there are even more that do. And the comedy, the writing, the direction, the acting, the scenery, the mythology, everything about it is just so appropriate for this time of year. And audience, if this is the first time that you've seen this movie, congratulations. Welcome to the club. if you're a regular watcher, like probably Kyle and I, who see this movie, I'm guessing every year, if not multiple times a year.
Oh yeah.
Gosh, it holds up so well, and it's so great to see where the careers of Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis and Bill Murray and Rick Moranis and Susan Sarandon. I'm sorry.
Hey, easy now.
Even Ernie Hudson. Everybody involved in this movie. Ivan Reitman went on to do such great things, and then his son Jason Reitman has done such amazing things. And even Ron Jeremy, who has a little appearance in there at one point. It's nothing but greatness to be had from this movie.
I never caught Ron Jeremy. Where's he at?
He's in, on the street in the end behind the barricade. You can just, if you Google Ron Jeremy Ghostbusters, you'll get a screen cap of it. But
Wow.
He's definitely just hanging out there at one point in this movie.
Interesting. Yeah, you know what? You mentioned everybody's career. If you go on the IMDb, Ernie Hudson's worked probably 5 times as much as any of these guys have. He's got like 240 credits on IMDb.
Good man.
So, yeah, he stays busy, that's for sure. Now, next week, we're going to be back with an all-new episode and another movie that's going to, I think, hit that nostalgic genre that I know you guys love. We're staying in the horror genre, and we're doing Child's Play. JD, what do you look forward to most when we dive into Child's Play?
The practical discussion about what we do with a doll.
Okay.
I still don't know that I'm afraid of a doll.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. I think it's going to be a fun one. You guys can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play. You can subscribe on YouTube as well for free. Just remember to click that subscribe button and then follow us on social media at BackInTimePod, and then email us at backintimepodcast@gmail.com. It's that time of the episode to climb into the Ecto 1 for today. We'll punch in today's date, and we're back to present day. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Ooh, who does your taxes?
Saving the day.